Hello, and thank you for watching this episode of the Sports Detective Show on YouTube. My name is James Williams, and today it is the last day of the NFL regular season. We got to find out who is going to be making the playoffs, who's not going to be making the playoffs, and we also had some tempers flare up at the end of the Atlanta Falcons New Orleans Saints game. So I'm going to show you guys the clips here in a second. Um, Basically, kind of like the preface to what I'm going to show you is the Saints and the Falcons were playing. And at the end of the game, when the Saints could have kneeled the ball down, ended the game, they decided to get a rushing touchdown with like a minute left when they were already up like 24 points, 25 points. And uh, Arthur Smith let his feelings be known to the Saints coach, Dennis Allen, after the game. We will show you this clip here in a second as soon as I get it pulled up. Let's start at the beginning. You can kind of basically, let's read the tweet first. Oh boy, Falcons head coach Arthur Smith just went off on Saints head coach Dennis Allen for scoring a late garbage time touchdown. That's effing bull snot. I'm not going to curse. So let's just go ahead and watch this clip to kind of give you the full context of this.
Career. Oh, and Arthur Smith's hot. That Dennis Allen scored a touchdown at the end. He is hot. He said, "What are you doing?" And he's going at Dennis Allen. You can read his lips, and you know. And I think he's got it right, by the way, to do that.
So yeah, like he said, you can read the lips. I actually think you could hear the audio there of what Arthur Smith said, and you might. So I'm going to show you the actual play here in a second, or at least show you the formation. I had trouble getting the video of the play to load. So kind of like there's a few trains of thought here when it comes to running up the score hypothetically in certain games. Now, here's kind of my take on it. My take is I come from this from like a college fan's perspective. And I think in college, you shouldn't try and run up the score because there's so many differing levels of like skill level. Like there's such a difference in like college football, let's say, of a Alabama or a Texas or a Michigan or a Washington, the four teams of the playoff, versus the bottom of the FBS or even the bottom of the FCS or the middle of the FCS. So, and also too, like college football, you have like way more players put in your backups. There's Tennessee is maybe like the only team that I know consistently, like when they have their backups in, is still running their up tempo offense. Like you kind of saw it towards the end of the Iowa game. I was actually rooting for Tennessee to run it up a little bit earlier this year against Vanderbilt. That's because I bet Tennessee with the spread in that game. If they would have got a touchdown late, they would have covered that spread. It would have helped my bets. But for the most part, in college, I don't think you should do that. I also come from a perspective of like in the 80s, like if you look back at like some old like box scores between like Iowa State, Nebraska, like Nebraska would always just run it up. And you would see the scores and it'd be like they'd get 77 points against Iowa State. And that was in the 80s when we played it, when people played a completely different form of football than we do now, where it wasn't as much like air passing, the rules weren't catered to the offense, and they were still scoring like 70 points. So like that's kind of like a little bit of like my perspective from it. But if you're talking about like the pros, I think, hands off, like you guys are all pros. The difference in skill level between like these teams were a game off of their record here in this game. Like that's, like, hey man, stop them. That's kind of my opinion of it. I also think too, and I guess I'll bring up the point I was about to say later. So I'm actually going to show you the play here. That they, or at least the formation. Again, I'm not sure if this tweet has fully loaded. Let's see. This is from the Saints Twitter account. So here is kind of the reason I think Arthur Smith might be more mad than he would have if they would have scored. If you can kind of see here, the Saints, I'm going to see if I can zoom in. The Saints are lined up in a kneeling formation. They're lined up in a kneeling formation. And what happens is Jameis Winston hikes the ball, hands it off to Jamal Williams, and Jamal Williams scores a touchdown. Now, that I do understand is a little bit Bush League, where like they're clearly, it looks like they're going to kneel, and then instead of kneeling it, they just go ahead and run up the score. That's a little bit different because you could be catching people off guard. People could be getting hurt in this thing. Now, there is another, this isn't going to load. There is another kind of angle at this too. and this is another reason why I'm okay with running up the score, is if you've been following gambling, if you've been following fantasy sports, or if you just kind of follow football, you know that these contracts that the NFL players have are very incentive laden, where it's like you might see the stats where it's like, if this guy throws 450 yards today, he gets an extra $250,000 in his contract. If this guy gets 2 touchdowns today, he gets $500,000 in his contract. There's always, or this guy gets an interception today. Like there's all of these different things. Like a few examples. I think it was Baker Mayfield. If he made the playoffs, he got like $1 million. Joe Flacco, I'm pretty sure for every playoff game he wins, gets $1 million. So kind of little things like that. So I don't know if Jamal Williams scoring that touchdown, if he got like an extra $20,000 or something. I don't know if there was some sort of incentive in his contract for every touchdown he scored this year, because that was actually his first touchdown of the year, which was kind of shocking to me, as someone that doesn't necessarily follow the Saints that intimately. So I don't know if he got some sort of contract incentive from that. And if that's the case there, like I'm okay with that. I do wish that they would have not, lined up in the kneeling formation. And that's kind of to the point. If you go and you look up like the post-game press conference here, because Arthur Smith was clearly mad. They asked Dennis Allen about it in the post-game. This is what Dennis Allen said. I'm not going to pull up the thing. I can basically kind of like paraphrase for him here, but he's like, hey, I would be upset too. Basically the team came up to Dennis Allen and said like, hey, we know we're supposed to kneel. There's not much time left, but we want to get Jamal Williams a touchdown. And Dennis Allen told them, or at least this is what he said. He said, no, go out there and kneel the ball. So that's why they were in the kneel down formation. And then they ended up handing it to Jamal Williams. So that's basically what happened there. And that's basically kind of the full story of it. Another kind of factor here too is these teams are rivals. I didn't know that until I heard Cam Jordan on a podcast earlier this week, where he was basically saying that like the Falcons are the Saints' number one rival. And hey man, this kind of just throws more juice to the fire. Another kind of lasting kind of piece to this story. Another reason Arthur Smith might have gotten this emotional at the end of the game, it may not just be excuse me, I can't talk right now. It might not just be because of that touchdown play and the fact that like the Saints basically just clapped their cheeks. It's because Arthur Smith's probably going to get fired. I was walking my dog earlier after the game. I listened to a Atlanta Falcons podcast, and basically the fan base is not happy. 3 years under Arthur Smith, they've went 7-10, 7-10, 7-10. Having Atlanta, this doesn't have anything to do with Arthur Smith's job performance, but I do think it's a little bit of an indicator. If you've ever had an Atlanta Falcons person on your fantasy team that's a high draft pick, like a Drake London, like a Kyle Pitts is very famous for this, or even I had Bijan Robinson on one of my teams this year. All very talented guys. We can clearly see that on the field, but it just always felt like they weren't getting the ball enough. The offense wasn't productive enough for an offensive head coach. And more than likely, I don't know when people are going to be really watching this video. I'm recording this before Sunday Night Football now. So maybe a lot of people are going to be watching this tomorrow after Arthur Smith has already been fired. But it looks like it's heading that way. I saw a report where basically the ownership group kind of like, I don't know if they told Arthur Smith, but there were reports like, hey, man, if you don't finish the season strong, we're going to move in a different direction. In Arthur Smith's case here, too, and this is kind of like the hard part of coaching in professional sports, is Arthur Smith could say, hey, you guys never got me a quarterback. We were drafting late in the or always early in the first round, and you guys never gave me a quarterback. You guys drafted Kyle Pitts. You guys drafted Drake London. You drafted Bijan Robinson. The Kyle Pitts one is actually really bad. I looked at the so it was the 2021 draft is when Kyle Pitts got drafted. I was looking at that, and if you look at that draft, if you just take out the quarterbacks in the top like 14, 15, everyone else other than Kyle Pitts is basically like all pro talent. Like Devontae Smith's in there, Jamar Chase, Patrick Surtain, Micah Parsons. There's just gobs of talent there. And, the quarterbacks do kind of look uncertain right now. Mac Jones is going to be a starter next year. Trey Lance isn't a starter now. Zach Wilson isn't a starter now. Who knows what's happening to Justin Fields after the season? Trevor Lawrence has gotten his team to the playoffs. He got a playoff win. They had the weird Urban Meyer year, but I do think, we're a little underwhelmed with Trevor Lawrence's career right now. But, if you're Arthur Smith, you do have a little bit of a case to be like, hey, you guys never got me a quarterback. You were throwing me Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke, and I got you guys 7 wins this year. So, yeah, I think that's basically my thoughts on it. A little bit kind of weird that like they lined up in the kneeling formation and went to score that, but ultimately I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. It might have been some contract incentives, and this is professional football. This is a rivalry, and hopefully this adds a little bit of juice for a little bit of fuel to the fire heading into next year when New Orleans and Atlanta play. Because I think we like it with if we see some emotional, we see emotion out of like coaches and players because fans care so much. We want the players and coaches to care just as much, if not even more than us. So there you have it, guys. That's going to do it for this video today. My name is James Williams. Thank you for watching this episode. If you like this video, if you like content like this, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit that like button. I've been doing this podcast for over a few years, for over like 3 or 4 years now. I've done like over 50 plus interviews, talking college football, NFL, NBA, college basketball, and we're just now starting to put clips like this on YouTube. So if you hit that subscribe button, it would really, really help support the show. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.